can your son keep a secret?
He's my son.
He's my son. He is a man of honor.
I
Which they
kind of
leave
liked
out that line in the
Yeah,
film.
I liked in
They
the
leave out that specific line. They say almost the exact
Yeah.
same thing, but in the book he says he is a man of honor.
Well, and I like that because in the book it's emphasized a lot more that he thinks his dad, in his way, is an
Mhm.
honorable person. You know, sort of like, or his dad at least tries to follow some sort of code of honor.
It parallels as well, because
You
remember
know.
at the end he says the same
Yeah.
thing. Was Michael Sullivan a good man?
Mhm.
He is my
He's my
father.
father. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the VF Comics and Graphics podcast. I'm really excited this week because this week our episode is the first episode of a new kind of focused mini-series thing we're going to do every so often where we watch adaptations of comics and graphic novels. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to watch the entire MCU all the way through. I think if you want to hear about those films, there's lots of places to go listen to people's thoughts. Maybe we will talk about some of them, but we are going to focus on a lot of non-superhero and honestly comics and graphic novels that you probably didn't realize were the basis for some of these movies. So if you didn't read the description and you just hit play, know that today's movie is Road to Perdition with Tom Hanks. And to talk about that movie with me are two of my friends.
Oh, do you want us to like talk about ourselves and stuff now? Oh, hi, I'm Megan. How's it going?
Hi, I'm Tom, and I've seen Road to Perdition.
Tom's always way better
Hey!
than you, Meg, about that.
Look at you. I'm sorry.
I feel like anytime I don't prepare you ahead
You
of time, I see, like, I can see in your eyes, like, you freeze up, like, what do I do with my hands?
Oh my god. So I used to be in ballet because
I'm not seeing it.
And one time I just forgot like half of the dance, and I remember people later were like, and I just like did some shit, and people later were like, we never would have known if your eyes hadn't gotten so fucking wide. And you just, the look of terror on your face.
I feel like that's something
the whole
Tom has
time.
had to learn to deal with, as I know Tom has some anxiety, and in fact he has several things he does whenever he's singing for his band at a show, like taking his shoes off, which is always just cute as can be. I love his feet. That's a weird thing to say. You know, after every show he will usually ask me, he's like, oh, do you think anybody noticed this or this? But he's gotten a lot of practice in just moving on in the middle of it and not like eyes pop out over his head whenever that happens.
I'm working on learning
So what you're
to
saying
embrace
is-
it. Sir, you know, like I really love Animal Collective, and that's something that they purposefully do into their sets to add improvisation and to change it, because that to them is like the joy of music and creation, is how it evolves and changes over time, and to avoid having it be the same, you know. And in fact, I remember reading an interview where one of their pieces of equipment was malfunctioning and a tech offered to fix it, and they were like, no, please don't. It adds a variant to, maybe it'll work this time, maybe it won't, and maybe we'll have to adapt to not having it, you know. which is
I like
mind-boggling.
that.
I can't imagine operating like that.
Yeah.
But it's
same.
I think a really healthy way to look at
Tom,
permanence
all
and
the
change.
amps are down. No, keep going.
Yeah, you had to, it's acoustic set.
Keep going.
So yeah, I know, and luckily I feel like I don't do anything that's like public facing like that, so I've never had to worry about
You're on a
performing.
podcast,
Yeah,
okay.
like I mean, we might put some
Guess
stuff on
it's not
YouTube,
public
but
facing.
if I freeze up, it just sounds like silence.
Yeah, and you can edit it
Or
out.
I can edit it out, or you just hear me
That's
going.
true. That's true. Please edit that out.
So,
hey, subscribe to our Patreon to get the
Oh,
full
yeah, by the
so
way,
you can hear that noise.
experience. So you can hear
So for
Marcus
those who
fucking
haven't
up
already,
over
but
and
who are
over
listening, we
again.
do have a Patreon that starts at $5 a month, where you get every episode unedited. So that way you will get everything from before we actually start cutting it up. So there's a lot of missing pieces usually. Definitely some vulgarity there.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
profanity. Sorry.
Which
about
we
that.
obviously typically will cut out quite a bit of that.
Will
We cut out some of it.
Oh.
Sometimes we just slip, and I'm just like, I don't care.
It's
It's in there now. But anyways, so today, what I'm calling these Adapt-isodes, where we talk about these graphic novel adaptations. I just like the ring of it. So this is Adapt-isode number 1 about Road to Perdition. Road to Perdition, for those who don't know, is a story that was originally a graphic novel written by Max Allan Collins with art by Richard Piers Rayner. And it tells of the story of Michael O'Sullivan, an enforcer for mob boss John Looney, who is betrayed by Looney's son, and then he goes on a quest for vengeance and freedom. And now I'm going to mess up sometimes because I've now read the graphic novel and watched the movie. And in the movie, they use a fictional name of Rooney. But in the book, they use the real name of the real person, Looney.
Yeah, John Patrick Looney. Yeah,
which is which ended up being one of the big key differences between the book and the film, is that the film seems to try, to the most part, stand on its own and edits names or leaves out historical characters altogether. But the book is submerged with true historical characters and events.
Yeah, there's like condensing as well, right? Because it's been a long time since I've seen the graphic novel, because I borrowed it from a friend a long time ago. But it's in the book is like episodic, right? And like
The book has 3 chapters.
multiple figures hunt down Michael and Michael, whereas they roll that all into Harlan Maguire.
Yes. So in the movie, they do create a character who is played. Oh my gosh, I just forgot his name.
Harlan Maguire,
the actor.
Jude Law.
Which
Jude
Law is almost unrecognizable in this role.
Fantastic.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
He did a Christian Bale and the Machinist level sort of messing with his body. Like he hunches over. He's balding. He is very skinny and pale. He is, if you were trying to put a face to the villainy, because for Tom to be the villain to Tom Hanks' hero, I put that in quotations, hero. Jude Law.
Oh, we're gonna have a conversation about that for sure.
Kills it.
What's funny about Harlan is he is semi-charming, in the same way that like Jude Law usually is in a film, like with his characters. So it's like that is there, but I like that the change of it, and you can kind of see this with Tom Hanks's way of going about with Michael Sullivan too, is Jude Law just simply removes the warmth from being charming. So like when Harlan talks, he's like conversational, but he's uncomfortable in the conversation. It's very much like John Doe's journals in Seven, where how much of a chore it is for Harlan to be in normal society, and just having these normal conversations because he's a sociopath, I mean, not to the extent that John Doe is, but maybe so, because he does some
he does
disturbing
things,
shit in this movie. So
and I remember they based that character off of some. We'll get to that here in a little bit. So to go back to the beginning, so the way the movie and the book start are different, but they have the same sort of event that pushes the narrative into motion. So the movie starts off much more slowly because the movie is trying to be, it's a more personal story in the film, whereas in the book I found it to be more grand. In the film, Tom Hanks is, when you first meet him, you're seeing him at a wake for someone that has died recently, and he is basically considered a second son to uh Rooney.
Yeah.
And Rooney's actual son, Connor, is played by Daniel Craig, who is so young here and gorgeous,
and also does a fantastic
and also
job.
does such an amazing job. Is kind of a little bit jealous of that, and so you see this very interesting dynamic that's not really there in the book. Clearly, like in the book, there's a soft spot for Michael, Tom Hanks' character, but it's not explored as deeply as the beginning of the film. But the events that in the film and the book are very similar, not the same, but similar, in that Daniel Craig's character and Tom Hanks' character Michael go to basically they're going to intimidate somebody. They're trying to figure something out. And during that intimidation, Connor decides, he gets very frustrated with the person. And
which is funny because Michael has sent to keep it calm.
Yes, Michael is sent to keep it calm.
Or at first he doesn't want to take Michael, and his father's like, no, you need to take Michael to make sure nothing goes wrong.
You're just talking. He stresses that you're just talking. Well, Connor doesn't want to listen to that, and so he shoots the person that they're with. And again, in both the book and the film, Michael's son, Michael Jr., has always wanted to know what his dad has been up to and has snuck inside the car and watches the entire thing. And after Michael has to shoot some of the other enforcers in the room, both Michael and Connor notice some movement outside the building, and immediately Michael realizes it's his son outside and not just like a spy or anything like that, which leads to a very similar exchange between Michael and Connor about can your son keep a secret?
He's my son.
He's my son. He is a man of honor.
Which they
leave out that line in the film.
I liked they
leave out that specific line. They say almost the exact same thing, but in the book he says he is a man of honor.
Well, and I like that because in the book it's emphasized a lot more that he thinks his dad, in his way, is an honorable person. Sort of like, or his dad at least tries to follow some sort of code of honor.
It parallels as well, because remember at the end he says the same thing. Was Michael Sullivan a good man? He is my father.
Right.
And so, both definitely deal with the complexities of, finding out more about your parents than you realize, and the growing up that happens when you find out that your parents aren't maybe what you thought they were, or in the idolized version that you had of them the whole time. But so that kind of sets things into emotion, because in the book, Connor and his father both, but in the movie, just Connor, Daniel Craig, decides that the kid cannot keep his mouth shut. And so he feeds Michael a fake letter.
Which Rooney does go to intimidate him. Like Rooney Sr.
Yes.
Like he does visit the house.
Yes.
Yeah.
And is like, isn't outright menacing, but it is a visit of
Yes.
intimidation to be like, you need to keep this secret,
And but in both instances, it leads to an attack on Michael Sr., which he survives in both, and an attack on his family. Well, luckily, Michael Jr. was out of the house that night, but when Connor came to the house, his mother and younger brother Peter are home and are killed by Connor. And
I can't remember if this is true in the graphic novel, Marcus, but in the film, Rooney Sr. isn't even aware.
Yeah, in the film
that this is the plan.
So in the film, Rooney Sr. is not aware that's a plan, but in the book, from what I recall, and I just read it this past week, Rooney Sr. is aware that Michael will be killed, but he's not aware that Connor has gone to kill the mom and the son. And in fact,
and see, they changed that to later with Frank Nitti with Rooney Sr., which I like better.
Yes.
I like that. Yeah, we'll get into that. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. And and honestly, and this scene ends up in the book kind of clears up something that I was confused about. In the movie, Connor just shows up, shoots the mom and the younger brother, and it's kind of off, and he doesn't seem to be looking for anyone else. He just kind of like leaves. And it's kind of established in the movie too that Connor doesn't really know the family as well as his dad.
Yes. Which it's great. He doesn't pay attention to detail because he's always like, I can't remember which Sullivan are you. Yeah.
And so in the book, Michael Jr. specifically in his narration posits that he's as he's killing the mom and younger brother, he couldn't even tell us apart. He just saw a kid and assumed it was me. It's very, 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 very direct, which is not something, and maybe I missed a piece in the movie, but it wasn't something I got clearly out of the movie. Although that was kind of, I didn't think it was like a bad move.
In the movie, they do it through the messenger, where he's like, take Peter, you have friends in Ireland. And he's like, I can't take Peter.
You're right.
It's like,
and I love he doesn't even say that. He's like, I can't take Peter with me. And like, lets that, right?
Yes.
Does he say he's dead?
Yes.
He says he's dead. Yeah.
And so that's a good pickup. I did not pick on that.
Yeah, so they deliver it that way through the messenger.
So pull this up real quick. So after that, Michael Sr., after surviving his attack, comes home, and it's so interesting to me. And this is where the book and the movie really deviates from the book, in that the book is much more violent, and to the point that in the book, for those who have seen John Wick, because it's become a pretty popular series at this point, Tom Hanks' character of Michael is very much like a 1930s John Wick in the book. He is killing guys left and right. He literally has a nickname, the Angel of Death. He has a reputation, and it's I would say almost more fantastical than what the movie does. The movie really keeps things close to the chest and toned down in terms of the more crazy elements.
Well, it's because most of the movie's about perspective, right? Like even in the opening monologue about Michael, some say Michael was a great man, and some say he had no good in him at all. And your opening shots of Michael are only from what Michael Jr. knows about him. So you don't even see Michael up close. He's like distant, he's cold, and so it's all about really where you are when you're interacting with him, right? Like, and the film makes I think a big deal about that. It also, you're not quite, I mean, Michael definitely has a reputation, but his reputation is definitely a bit more calm. It seems more his, like, if you're seeing Michael, you know that you better follow along or you are in trouble.
Serious.
It's like, it's more like it's the final warning, kind of reputation that he has, as opposed to like, oh, there's Michael, you're dead,
Because even in the book, it's very much about perspective. He says frequently when narrating events that whenever whenever there are scenes in the book where of Michael Sr. without Michael Jr., he makes sure to point out, well, this is what I've read in the papers and other people's research, and this is what I assume happened. So it explains kind of the fantastical
Yeah.
elements a little bit
Yeah.
too.
And I like that,
But
actually.
to go back to what you were saying about like how they frame Tom Hanks for the beginning of the film, especially as very distant, the cinematography, which won an Oscar that year,
Yeah. Yeah.
like is
That
incredible.
rain scene alone.
Yes. Conrad L. Hall, who unfortunately passed away before the Oscars, and so he received this posthumously. It is one of the, I cannot believe how well this movie stands the test of time. You could have told me it was made in the last year, and I would have believed you. In fact, honestly, I'd expect if they remade it now, it to be not as good. Like, there's just something about
It would be interesting.
there's something
Yeah.
about the care and the quality, and even though they tone down some of those more violent tendencies, the movie doesn't shy away from the fact that Michael Sr., Tom Hanks, who usually plays Mr. Nice Guy, has done some bad things, and he very much intends to do some pretty bad things in the near future in this. Like, Tom Hanks is, honestly, this is the furthest I've ever seen him away from his standard typical Tom Hanks character.
That's why it's a great role. Now he's done Cold-Blooded in a couple of things, like Captain Miller in Saving Private Ryan is kind of cold-blooded.
Yes. I forgot about
and not
Captain Miller.
necessarily
I hadn't seen
cold-blooded.
that.
He's emotionally detached, which definitely is a coping mechanism that gets him through World War II, and those events. But that's the same thing, that's the only other character you really see him do that, where he's, that scene at the farm when Michael's injured. It's the first time like Michael really lets himself talk to his son and be honest, and you can tell that even Michael Jr. realizes, like, my father does care about me. Like he does care. He's, it's just like nice to hear him admit, like, it's just easier for me this way.
They really earned that scene, because when Michael Jr. goes to hug his father, it hits you. They have worked so hard.
It even takes him aback a little bit.
They've spent so much time in this movie really showing, keeping him distant, that when that moment happens, it's so earned. And I remember just being like, oh my gosh. And Tom Hanks acts his damn heart out with the way he kind of starts hugging him back.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that I would have liked to have seen in the movie, though, was his dad's relationship with like Catholicism, and like it was they made a big deal out of it.
You're absolutely right.
And I kind of missed that.
I wondered,
especially with his spoiler alert, his dad's death.
I wonder if, and this is, having grown up Catholic, my opinion, I felt that the depiction of Catholicism was very stereotypical of the Irish and how it's often viewed. And so, like, I personally was not upset about the lack of inclusion. For instance, I'll try to dance around it. So I was watching 30 Rock, and which is just an amazing show. Some episodes have not stood the test of time. But Jack's brother is in town, and Tracy Jordan is looking for religion. And so Jack's brother says, oh, you're Catholic, you just go to confession and you're good to go. Like it's this, all you have to do is say the words, clean slate situation. And in the book, because like a lot of them do go to church, although the one scene in the movie in a
Lost
church
shows you that that's not always the case, by the way.
One scene
and an incredible confession scene.
There is, I won't spoil this scene, but there's a scene very quickly in a church near the end of the movie. Y'all remember what I'm talking about? Where Tom Hanks is like right there. Oh, ooh,
That's a great
It's so
scene.
good. And so
that's
as someone who grew up Catholic and maybe doesn't still always agree with all of the ideals behind it, I just that depiction of, oh, you just go to confession and like you're good to go kind of mentality irks me. And I know his dad seems to look at it more than that, but after every kill, he goes there and then he knows he's going to kill again. And so it's just it treats it a little bit more loosely. Whereas I do like his son's perspective on it, where he's just like, no, we don't do that with that intent. And so his son, in the book, his son, I can barely hear that in the background. Don't worry.
Yeah, don't worry.
In
You're okay.
in the book, his
life.
son does end up killing at least a couple people, but it's never like his intention. And the father and Michael ends up taking Michael Jr. to confession, but just the way that Michael Sr. handles it and stuff like that, I can see some people being like, nah. And I can't remember what year the movie was made. Let me look at this real quick. 2002.
Yeah, 2002.
And this is me just talking off the cuff. Not a super good time, I think, in the early 2000s to highlight the Catholic Church. If that's around that time.
I can't remember if that was
That
all coming to light in the
yeah.
early aughts or not. Honestly, like 2002, you're in the beginnings of post 9/11 society, and this is, I mean, honestly, summer of 2002, if I remember
Yeah, it came
right.
out in the summer.
So, yeah. So, I mean, I feel like terrorism and things like that were the main focus of news media at the time, because all of that was
true,
just
yeah.
now
That's
coming
true.
about.
It was.
Yeah, we were still in the
Because I honestly, like, I remember seeing it in the theater with a friend, and I definitely have a vague memory of that time of like my dad always having the news on and it just constantly being about, just reactions to where the state of the world was moving to post 9/11.
So those are just some of the reasons I could think of. He may have wanted to just Sam Mendes, who directed it, who's an amazing director, may have just decided
incredible. Yeah.
Maybe just wanted to take it in a different direction than the religious aspect. But I like it whenever I'm a big fan of when someone adapts something, and maybe this is me coming back from my superhero comic book background. I don't want you to just take the story and put it on the screen. I can go and read the book if that's what I wanted. Because usually the book...
Some fans, and like Megan just said, some fans do want a very loyal adaptation. So it is really hard. And then some fans want a Charlie Kaufman adaptation. So, there's just... that can be hard. It's crazy because like with the thing with Michael Jr., it's hard to say which is better because both are really great. I like that in the film Michael is prevented from committing violence, and I think there's an article with Max Allan Collins where he talks about the way that he depicted violence in the book and the way the art shows certain things as like being like he doesn't like it being called comic book violence, because to him comic book violence was like he even described it as like the classic like onomatopoeia of just like wow boof bam and then that person's okay, and in this like no, violence has a consequence. In fact, a violent act is what starts everything in the story, and I like that it's interesting in the book to put Michael in that situation where he enters the cycle of violence and has to learn about his place in it and the consequences of it. But it's also incredible to see the father as like his legacy being like, no matter what, my son won't enter this cycle, so,
and that's where
saying that out loud, I think I do like the film version choice better. But
and I think
it's still like both are great.
In the film version, Tom Hanks's Michael is a much more, I think, sympathetic character than the books.
Yes.
In that way, in that like because they don't show how violent he can be, he's not killing as many people. I mean, gosh, at one point in the book, he actually remarks, he's like, "I've killed 11 people tonight." Are you going to be
Seeing the movie first did affect how I read it. Like
and
I
read
wasn't
it
crazy
first,
about
so...
the book because I love the movie so much.
And I think they both,
You know?
I think that they definitely both stand on their own for different reasons. By, you know, you have similar events all taken very differently. I do prefer the more sympathetic version with Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
But I like
you
a
watched
lot
it
of the
first, too.
historical context from the book that's kind of left out of the movie. Like in the movie, they ignore Elliot, and they don't have Elliot Ness. Al
They don't have
Capone.
Elliot Ness at all.
They have ZD show
Al
up.
Capone's mentioned, right?
Yeah, briefly.
Yeah.
But they have just...
They actually, in the film, they actually filmed.
Yeah, he was supposed to be in the film,
but it got cut.
And that may have been them just making I think in the film, a stylistic choice to not necessarily tie it to those events and maintain focus on the characters, because the film is much more focused on the characters than I think the book is.
Yeah, for sure.
Because in the book, you don't get to know Michael, I feel like, as well as you get to know him in the movie.
Yeah, I got that same vibe too. Of when I read it, I didn't feel the attachment that I felt to Michael. In the same way, you know, and I don't know if that happened for you, Megan, since you got the kind of the way you usually want it, of seeing it in literature first and then seeing the adaptation. But you know, it's an interesting thing, because it really does go back to what you were saying the last episode about seeing you know, sequential art as more purely like in the visual sense. Like, you compare it more to films in your mind than you do, because I think like it does. But it's funny that this is definitely a story where some of my favorite parts could not happen in a book, you know. And the main thing is like, who directed it with like Sam Mendes, and he loves like water. You know, like water is definitely a big part. Like, it opens near water, major deaths occur near water. And in fact, like the most like impactful scene for me is when he finally does kind of confront Rooney in the rain.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the best scenes is that man in the car hits the car horn, you know, like he falls down dead on it. And the noise that would make, you know, just like that earth-shattering honk as is unending, because you can't get in the car. And then the machine gun fire, but we only hear Thomas Newman's piano, you know, and it's incredible. This like chaotic, you know, crazy violent scene next to this like sleepy, you know, lulling piano as this like rain falls, you know, so thick. That's a movie scene, you know. It's like so, and you can draw that, of course, but
I would say, like,
you know,
visually, you could definitely get it. Will Eisner is famous for having done that with a lot of his like spirit work. Sometimes the way he drew rain, it became its own style. But that's where like film has the added auditory
sound, sound giving it, you know, the one up there, because that's always the scene that I remember from that movie. And it's like, he's one of my favorite composers too, you know. And
it was
and
the music was very good.
Carry on that, you know, I feel like major spoiler alert if you're planning on reading this or watching this. So might want to skip ahead like 2 minutes.
I don't know. Spoilers for a 2002 movie is like
I'm on the edge,
you know.
But so skip ahead 2 minutes, because I just want to say real quick that the same thing he does he doesn't do the same thing, but he does something else with sound in the movie that I thought was masterful, and that is when Tom Hanks is shot at the beach house. The way he does the sound of the waves over that scene,
it terrified Melinda. She like.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the just the suddenness of it.
And it's on top of being so well shot. He does another great scene with just the sound of the ocean in the background of the situation, which just accentuates it almost like how quiet the scene is.
I also hate that Harlan gets Michael in the end.
Yeah.
Fucking
I do too. I
hate
didn't
it.
like that.
Yes.
I I didn't like that. I mean, obviously him dying made sense, but
Like,
I
for
didn't
sure,
like
you
the
know,
decision.
it's because, like, I got in the conversation with Melinda of, like, did he deserve death, you know? Because I feel like that's the first argument of, like, well, you
Yeah.
know, that's how the cycle ends, you know? But it's like,
Yeah, it is.
with Michael, it's hard to even say, because what a high price to pay with his wife and his youngest son's death.
Mm-hmm.
That really, like,
That's true.
anything that these awful men that happened to Connor or any of that, they had that coming
Yes.
to them.
I also
you
think,
know?
thinking of Connor, again, potential major spoiler alert, blah, 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 skip, whatever. Connor's death in the film is so much better and more beautiful than in the book. On top of
It was
like there's
good.
some shots in the film where I felt that there was almost a great comic book artist mentality of the way he framed the scenes. And this was one of them where Tom Hanks walks through the first off, walking through the hotel is so good. But then
The sound of the
yeah,
hammer being pulled back on his gun as he pulls it out of his
yeah,
coat, too, in the hallway. You're like, fuck, it's about to happen.
But he walks in and you don't follow. You see Tom Hanks go into the bathroom and you're facing the bathroom door and you can see Tom Hanks the whole time, but you don't see Connor. You just see Tom Hanks go in, turn, shoots him, but then as he leaves, the way the door swings and the mirror catches the image of Connor's body and the blood and the brain splatter behind him
Yeah.
is just I thought it was just masterful. It was
so good.
so damn good. Just proof of what an art is. Like again, that the cinematography they deserve that Oscar. He worked for that Oscar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It was so
But
good.
man, gosh. And whereas, you know, and in the book versus the movie, in the book, you know, he's kind of after getting a hold of both Connor and his father, where dealing with senior Rooney in the film is just something he ends up having to do, but something he tries to avoid. He does not want to necessarily do something to Rooney Sr. because in the film they've established that they have a father-son-ish bond. In the book, that bond's not there, and he goes after both of them.
Yeah, in the film, he has a hard time even calling it against Michael.
Yep.
Like,
He's just
he's
like, oh
like
my gosh.
struggling with it, but it's like, if I don't, I can't. Michael's going to do what he's going to do, so I either get in the way and protect my son, or you know.
I liked though. Okay, so obviously, if they had stayed completely true to the book, the rain scene wouldn't have happened, and the super emotional Paul Newman, scene. But I really liked that he wanted to keep John Looney in the book alive and in jail. I liked that.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought that was good. Because like I don't think it made sense for him to kill
Well,
him.
in the
I didn't
movie,
I
it
didn't
did to me because it was a means
love
to
that.
an end. He didn't want to, but he knew the
Yeah.
only way to get Zeddy to agree is he was like, "Look,
Nitty.
Nitty, sorry, I've been saying Zeddy. Oh my gosh, I'm hungry.
Ziti
I'm
is
clearly
really
hungry."
good. Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
tasty.
If you're making ziti tonight, that's
Yes.
awesome, because it is.
But he, you know, he
Quality.
makes a point like, I need to find out where he is, and Capone's men are the ones who can tell me. And in the film, he tries to avoid it, but when it's unavoidable, he's like, if I take out Rooney Sr., Capone's men will be like, well, there's it, just like in the book.
He knows it's
He
the
creates a
only obstacle.
situation where like they're like, well, at this point, Junior is a liability. So yeah, here. And in the movie, they again do the book, they kind of let it just happen, but in the movie, the build up to Capone's men just letting it happen, like leading him basically to the hotel room, leaving the door unlocked.
See,
Ooh, so good.
I felt more build up in the book because I knew what was happening in that movie, and it wasn't as
Okay.
impactful.
That's a good point. It does like lead the with the movie. It's like definitely presented to you as like the summation of the
Yeah.
events. Like, of course, this
Yeah.
is coming, and that's
The
not
thing is
true
that
for the.
Which is, how I felt about, I guess, spoiler, the death at the end, the beach house death. Like, I knew it was happening because I knew he had to die.
Yeah,
And
because we don't
so
see
I think it would have been more
Harlan
like,
called off or
well,
anything like
and
that. You
that
know,
ending of the film and the book being different in that way is why I don't mind adaptations not being 100% faithful, because then that way there are certain things that aren't ruined for me because I know what's going to happen. And
that's true. That's a
I
good
know,
point.
like a weird example, Ashley, doesn't, she's watched the old Spider-Man movies, but when Spider-Man Far From Home with Mysterio came up, when Mysterio turns on Peter, she was flabbergasted. Ashley
Oh my god,
couldn't
I was
believe it, and I was
too.
like, what?
I
And
was
What?
yeah, that
too.
just she
I
didn't watch the
know.
cartoons growing up. And
I was flabbergasted when he wasn't at first. When it was
Same.
sympathetic, I was like, "No,
Yeah.
fuck
I had-
Mysterio."
I didn't
And
know
so
who he
that's-
was.
I don't feel sorry for Jake
I had no
Gyllenhaal's
idea.
ass. No.
That's where awareness of
Oh, man,
character
I
history
did.
or a book or a story can really change. And I love that the people at Marvel took advantage of that, where they were like, some
Yeah.
people are going to be waiting, and here's the thing, the great thing about them not adapting a straight story from a comic, not that it would be sensible to do that anyway, was those who knew were like waiting for it. Like, where's the moment? And then when he takes on such a mentor fatherly role, you're like, oh man,
What the
like
shit
what's
is
going
happening?
on?
Yeah.
Maybe they're
Yeah.
not
Well,
gonna do
and-
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
those who didn't know about Mysterio, you were like, oh, that's so cool. He's found this other, what the fuck?
And it's funny because I'm
Yeah.
guilty of like whatever the director tells me to buy into. Usually, I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
okay, like, And so with this story, like, but he was one where I was like, there's no fucking way, like,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, and that's I don't like that I get upset when I read a book and it's different from the movie, because sometimes it's a really great world, it's a really great story for the most part, but there's stuff about it that the author just kind of like totally fucked up, which I don't think is true of this. Or like you're just like, this is shitty and could be better. And that's obviously, I think that's great if a movie is able to take that and make the world that already exists into something exponentially better. That's totally a thing.
yeah.
Well, I don't
I'm
know.
the asshole for not
No,
being able to handle it
there,
sometimes.
I think a good way to approach all those things is it. One thing is not true all the time for every case. Sometimes they
Yeah.
royally fuck a book up whenever they're
That's-
adapting it, and you're like,
Yeah.
my god.
That's
Like, this was
annoying.
either just a
Yeah.
pure cash grab or
Mhm.
you just had no respect for anyone that's read this book or the book itself. And sometimes someone that really loves it is just aware that they can do something really cool with it, of like,
Yeah.
I think superhero comic book readers have a very special connection to this sort of thing, because besides like Sherlock Holmes and James Bond, the one place that you see constant revisions and new versions and adaptations of characters is in superhero comics. Every artist and writer that's taken on Batman has had a different interpretation of that character. And sometimes, and now that we're knee deep in Batman movies too, some of them I like, some of them I don't, and that's okay. Like, I'm just like, ooh, I'm not like down for that person's interpretation. And I think that the rest of the world, as we see more and more great book adaptations and stuff like that, is gonna end up getting more on board and understanding with that, where it's okay for you to be like, oh, I'm not a fan of this version. I was trying to think, I feel like there was a movie I'd seen recently where the film had a cleaner, I thought did a better ending than the book. What was it?
Oh, Road to Perdition. Yeah.
Yeah. That is definitely one.
No, I remember it wasn't better. It was different. But I remember whenever, and the Watchmen graphic novel is one of the best, if not the best graphic novel ever written at this moment. But in the film, one thing they decided to do was, instead of Adrian Veidt randomly transporting a giant squids all over the planet, as he did in the comic book, in the movie he does it by stealing Dr. Manhattan's power. In the movie, he instead just uses Dr. Manhattan's power to teleport A-bombs across the planet, and they have Dr. Manhattan's energy signature on them. Therefore, the government's like, Dr. Manhattan did this. And I always thought that was a little bit more tied together ending for it. But all in all, that movie sucks. But I thought that ending was a little bit tighter. But then, because of the comic book ending, we got the amazing Watchmen series on HBO the other year,
which is so good. My God, that series was so good.
And so,
have you seen that yet, Megan? It's so good.
It's worth it. It's just going to be the one season.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, it's Damon Lindelof from Lost. And it has
that's not a selling point anymore, Tom. I think
a little bit of that, it has some of that eeriness to it,
They definitely adapted the tone of the book, I thought, way better. Whereas the movie tone and some of the stuff they did was a little bit too close to how Frank Miller ended up doing his adaptation of The Spirit, which I got to talk with Randy Duncan about just this past week for the library, where he's a professor of comic book studies. We've had him on before. We talked about The Spirit by Will Eisner's film adaptation, and he's like, let's not talk about it, please, because it's such a bastardization of the original story. So I feel like we covered a lot of ground here. We talked about the whole movie, but hopefully not so much that you're not going to want to go see it. I had a couple pieces of trivia we didn't go over. One was, there is a scene where Tom Hanks' Michael doesn't know he's about to be attacked, and in it, he very quickly shoots the guy that's about to attack him and another guy in the corner, and it's a very cool little action scene. Yeah, he did that himself. And Sam Mendes was like, "Oh, hell yes," on that.
Yeah.
And then something we talked. Oh, actually, that was really it. The other thing I had that I thought we hadn't was, we did talk about how Michael Sullivan Jr. in the book does kill, and his father does actively hand him a gun, whereas in the movie, his father does still try to hand him the gun, but there's a little bit more fight there, and Michael's not as eager or willing on all that. Also, I do have to bring up the comedy of Michael learning to drive and being the getaway driver scenes.
Oh yeah,
so good.
So good.
A nice little light touch at that part of the movie, because there's one part where so Michael being a kid. Oh, and we didn't talk about Michael is Tyler Hoechlin. He's Superman.
Oh,
that's how old this movie is. The guy currently playing Superman.
Yeah,
on
the
TV,
movie is old. So it's funny. I feel like that needs to be a disclaimer in the episode of at this point, it's it's an older movie. It could be a classic, for sure.
He's my age. We're about the same age. And he's playing Superman on TV, on Lois and Superman, and he was Superman on Supergirl, and he's so great at it. And I couldn't help but see Superman in several scenes. It kind of took me out of it.
That's so
even
funny.
Though he's 12 or 13. But yeah, so that was really, really cool. The actors that they have show up in this movie are so good.
Yeah, what a cast. I mean,
yeah, holy cow. I mean, that was Paul Newman's last
Paul Newman's last movie.
So yeah, which fantastic in it. Wow. My God,
he did so good.
I can't remember where I was going with it before I got.
I remember I had a hard time in Casino Royale not being like, fuck Daniel Craig. It's like, just like remembering him
that's
as
funny.
Connor.
See, that was my first
Yeah.
and
movie
being
of
like,
his.
this guy's an asshole, you know?
I know. I've never
So,
seen him be an asshole.
that shows how
It's
good Daniel
weird.
Craig is,
He's
because I
good at
fucking
it.
love Daniel. Like,
Yeah.
that's been the,
Yeah.
like, I definitely grew up watching James Bond, and like just like loving them for the fun of just, you know, campy action movies that they are. But
Yeah, for sure.
I like,
Good.
you know, with Casino Royale and Skyfall, like those are just great, elevated that genre for
Casino
sure.
Royale changed the game for sure.
Yeah.
I was going with something before I got distracted by him being Superman. I was just like, what the hell? Oh, because Megan was like, oh, he's in Teen Wolf. And I was like, I never watched damn Teen Wolf.
Yeah. Well, that's why I was
From
kind of like,
Teen
ew,
Wolf?
it's the guy from Teen Wolf.
And then I
'Cause
immediately was like,
I
oh, it's
also
Superman.
don't.
Hell yeah.
Oh, something that did pop into my mind is when we were talking about adaptation endings, when it's a direct thing, and it's not a graphic novel ending or anything, but No Country for Old Men, I think, is like direct.
No spoilers.
You haven't seen No Country for Old Men?
I have it checked
Okay,
out.
No Country
in the
for Old
library.
If she
Men
didn't have it
I
checked
have it.
out, I would be like,
I
tell
have
her.
is one of my favorite endings to a
have it.
movie for
Okay.
sure. Like it
Yeah.
is
Literally.
it is
Yeah,
definitely one of my favorite
Yes.
endings to a movie
It's
ever.
a part of list
And
of
I'm pretty
films.
sure it is a
Okay.
direct like reading of the final chapter.
Wow.
And
Okay.
it is a part of a series of films of Tommy Lee Jones making up for Batman Forever.
Yeah. I
remember
he's
watching
so good in
Captain
so
America: The
many
First Avenger and being
things,
like,
though.
"Oh yeah, he's making up for Two-Face right now."
He's so good. Though.
He'll be doing it. Yeah.
Man, you know, it's so fucking just thinking of him having to put up with Jim
Carrey.
Carrey.
I remember reading stuff that he hated it. That's another Adapt-isode we'll have to do. We'll have to watch Batman Forever and just talk about Tommy Lee Jones.
Yes.
God.
Yeah, absolutely.
Megan and I
visit like
Oh, go ahead.
No,
I was
go
gonna
ahead. Because I grew up loving Tommy Lee
Yeah.
Jones from like, it's just funny like seeing him from like The
Lonesome
Fugitive,
Dove.
then Men in Black, all which are incredible. Like, you know, I loved Men in Black as a
Oh,
kid,
man,
and I
so
loved
weird.
The first one's still good.
The Fugitive is, you know, like that was such a great movie. Now I haven't seen the sequels to Men in Black, so I don't know
You're not missing anything.
if those hold up. Okay, yeah, I was like, I've only seen the
I
first
haven't
one, but
either.
that first movie is a good childhood memory.
The third
for sure.
one is Josh
It was
Brolin
fun,
playing
yeah.
a young Tommy Lee Jones, and he kind of does a great job.
Josh Brolin is pretty incredible. He's
Josh
rolling up there
Brolin.
for me.
Yeah.
Like I said, I just watched Sicario recently, and
Yeah.
and he and Benicio del Toro are incredible in that.
Well, I told Megan. Megan brought up another. So for those who are listening to us ramble, because someone's listening.
Yeah, shit. Some editing to do on Road to Perdition.
But so Megan and I earlier were talking about, you know, what movie we might do next, and she had come up with another action film, and then I was like, no, I want to do something different. So we'll announce these ahead of time. So if you want to watch before we talk about it, you can from now on. But I mentioned that one thing that popped in my mind was Ghost World.
Oh yeah, Ghost World's
It's
great.
supposed to be very good.
Movie and
Well, and
book.
I was thinking the same thing.
And I'm 98%
never-
certain, and this is coming out soon-ish, that Randall Park is adapting Adrian Tomein's Shortcomings.
Oh,
and
really?
yes, and I don't know if it's even in production yet, but if it is, you know, like we'll have to keep our eye on that, because that would be a really great a great book, of course, but I'm excited to see what he does with that.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm like gonna check on that for us as we're talking. Shortcomings, Randall Park. Yeah, it was announced in 2021 that he was gonna make his directorial debut doing Shortcomings adaptation.
Well, all right.
So I imagine that's in production now.
I don't know. He's spending all like. Who'd you say it was? Randall Park.
Randall Park, he's going to be directing it, and
Randall Park,
think...
like from like Ant-Man and
yep.
Oh,
mm-hmm. Yep, fresh off the
Oh,
boat.
so cool. So he'll have to stop practicing his up close magic to direct this film.
Yeah,
I love that
he
got
did.
good at it.
His character popped up in WandaVision too, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
Mhm.
you're
We'll
right.
keep
Oh my
planning and
God,
talking
you're
that
right.
out as a team. For everybody listening, thank you so much for checking us out. This has been a very long talk about the road to perdition. Please make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. You'll find all the links in the description below. You can also, if you're feeling generous, go to patreon.com in the link below and give us a little bit of money so that way we can afford to not only buy these books instead of going broke buying these books, because I'm going to buy them anyway. And I don't care how poor I get. I do, but, I'd rather not. But your money could help. And then, we could also start doing some really cool prizes. And that includes a lot of the book club books that we are doing. So make sure to click any of those links below and do something nice for us, even if it's just to say, hey, you guys are okay. And I appreciate that. And that's going to be it for us this week. Don't forget, everyone, to always read what you love.